Welcome to the I'm not stalling, you're just early Q&A, otherwise known as I need more time to work on my works in progress. Hey, I'm honest about my filler content. In fact, I need to figure out more so I can spend more time on the sewing and crafting projects. Wink, wink. The upshot is you folks get to ask questions and I can try answering them. Fun, fun. I put out the word on my Patreon and YouTube community tabs. I also mentioned it in my Instagram stories, but I didn't see any responses there, which means that either I didn't get any responses in Instagram, which is possible because I don't use it much, or I did get responses and I have no idea how to access them, which could also be true. I tend to use Instagram recreationally rather than as a work platform, and it really does show. Also, if you attempt to engage with me on the Facebook page, good luck. I use Facebook mostly for family stuff and the occasional dive into a Facebook group if there's no other option. So the easiest ways to get hold of me if you really need to are YouTube, Patreon, and Instagram. Someone's bound to mention Discord, and all I can say is I mentioned easy ways, not the secret handshake ways. I'm going to try answering questions in a certain hierarchy, so you may be able to skip around if I remember to put chapters on the video. Most of the questions fell into one of 5 categories, and I'm going to try answering questions from supporters first in each category. I hope that sounds fair. The categories in alphabetical order are crafts, kittens, life, projects, and travel. Let's start with travel because I think it's the shortest category. Jean would like to know if I like to travel, and if so, where would I like to go? Generally, I do like to travel when I am fit to travel, so if I don't have to buy an extra seat or need any kind of special accommodation because of my size or because of my mobility. There's a lot of places I'd like to go, but I'd like to go there when I can actually enjoy them and not be worried that somebody else is being put out because of me. Or, that it's being more expensive than it needs to be. What is my favorite of the places I've visited or lived in? Everywhere has its perks. British Columbia is the only place in Canada where I have been known to tan, so that makes it, kind of favorable if I want to get some sun. Some of my other favorites, Toronto for its big city energy and the CN Tower as a compass. Yellowknife has a fantastic community and culture. It's really easy for me to be more critical of Alberta because I've been here for over 20 years. There are some good things I can say about it. There's some bad things I can say about it. I'm very critical of the politics out here, being somebody who was raised fairly liberally. But, every place has its ups and its downs. How many provinces in Canada have I visited or lived in? I had to look this up on a map, so Google Maps got my click for the day. 6 provinces and 1 territory. I've lived in British Columbia, Alberta, the Northwest Territories, Ontario. I've visited or passed through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Quebec. I still need to visit the Maritimes past Quebec. I still haven't visited the Yukon quite yet. Life's not over yet. I still have plenty of time. If I could travel anywhere in the world, where would I go, and who or what would I like to see there? I'd like to go anywhere and everywhere as long as I'm in good enough shape to enjoy it. I have an artistic background, so going to Europe to see a lot of the artistic great works would be fantastic. Things that I have studied but never have had a chance to see in person. I would love to be able to go to some of the museums and see some costuming firsthand. And by costuming, I mean traditional dress. The husband and I have talked about going to Copenhagen, mostly because of their bicycle culture. Here in North America, it's very much car culture, and bicycling is done recreationally. We would love to see how it is in a place where the bicycles that we have that we bought for transportation are actually used as transportation rather than recreation. My family's been in Canada for many, many, many generations. It would be kind of nice to see where way back in the day everybody came from. There's Scots, Irish, English, etc. ancestry. It would be nice to be able to see where those folks came from. even though my home is definitely Canada. Anywhere and everywhere, as long as I'm in good enough shape to enjoy it. And I think somebody was asking about Australia, whether I wanted to go to Australia, if there's anything I wanted to see there. Australia is one of those kinds of places where, if you believe what they say, Australia is trying to actively kill you. So I would probably go to Australia, but go someplace where hopefully I'm not going to run into any of the wildlife. I mean, when a spider that fits into my little craft cauldron can scare the willies out of me, it would be kind of nice to go to a place where the spiders aren't bigger. Apparently, kangaroos can be quite the hazard on the roads. So, considering I'm the person who does most of the driving, that could be dangerous. I'd probably wind up going to New Zealand, though, because, the husbeast is part hobbit, and very tall hobbit, but part hobbit, and we would have to go see the homeland. The part of the question that was about who I would want to see, that assumes I know people outside of my milieu that I want to actually go visit. And to be very honest, I am a very small part of the YouTube sewing and costuming community. I don't really know all that many people. So if the time comes where I do become more well acquainted with other people, I would love to go visit them. Now, as I mentioned, a lot of the questions that I prioritized are from my supporters. If you take a look in the description down below, you'll see links to my Patreon, or I've also very quietly turned on channel memberships. They are fairly interchangeable, so there's not much that one is getting that the other one doesn't have access to. It just depends on the platform and its specific things. But if you're interested in becoming a patron or a member, that's there. If the monthly commitment is not your thing, that's great. I am just glad to have you here watching the video, hopefully booping the like button, and if you're not subscribed, please consider it. You can comment down below what you think. Do you have dream projects that you think that I should be taking a look at? Do you think that I should be trying to teach the cats how to sew? Just let me know. So let's go to crafts. Robin asks, will we have a crafting stitch and bitch soon? And the answer to that is I've been considering it. It's a matter of nailing down the best date or time. Sherry would like to know, what craft would I like to learn or try? And what is my favorite material to work with? When it comes to crafts, it almost feels like I'm trying to catch up to the things that my mom had done, like when I was a kid. And in other cases, it's trying things that other members of the family might have tried. Like, I've always kind of made fun of quilting, and a lot of it is because knitting was so popular for such a long time that when quilting came in vogue, it kind of supplanted knitting. So all of a sudden, instead of finding quilting and knitting books or quilting and knitting magazines at the rack, you only had quilting. It's like somebody figured that, well, they've stopped knitting now, they're all quilting, and that just wasn't the case. So I kind of looked at quilting with this jaundiced eye of, you're trying to replace my knitting. And so I've kind of always had this antipathy towards quilting because quilting took over. Also, when you take a look at places like the fabric section at Walmart, or the fabric section at Michael's, or the fabric section in Fabricland, you see this vast quantity of quilting cottons and tiny little sections of garment sewing fabrics. And those are all seasonal, so you're lucky to get taffeta when it's not around Christmas time, for instance, or silk outside of the bridal section, or whatever. And with cottons, it's a matter of trying to find the right cottons, because cotton for quilting has a different drape and heft to cotton for making garments. So you might come across a really nice print that you think would make a great skirt, only to find that it doesn't drape the right way. Because, of course, it's for quilting, it's not for making clothes. So I have a tendency to look at quilting with a raised eyebrow and just that attitude of, you want me to what? finding a lot of quilting and patchworking books around here has been actually kind of fun, because it's not the whole flavor of the week quilt thing of everybody's making this quilt by this particular influencer. These are patchwork designs that have been around since the 1930s or 40s or whatever. And there's something refreshing about that. There are a whole bunch of bins full of fabric and stuff in the other room that I kind of look at it and I go, well, if I want to learn smocking, there's a whole bin full of stuff there. And if I want to learn quilting, there's a whole bin full of stuff here. And then if I want to make myself a coat or a parka or something along those lines, well, there's two bins here. This one has Stroud and Duffel, and the other one has lining and shell fabric. So there's a whole bunch of things for me to try. Particularly things that not only Mum dabbled in, but also the husband's grandmothers dabbled in, that some of my online acquaintances are dabbling in. I do have a patchworking project or two that are coming up that I'm trying to make time for. So that's something that's coming down. It's been nice learning embroidery, because I've always wanted to learn embroidery. Got a little moth on the go right now that is kind of fun. And it's not for any purpose other than my own enjoyment and putting things up on the wall. My favorite material to work with, I don't really have one. Cotton's kind of cool, but I need to make more clothing before I can really dig down on what it is that I really, really like. I know what I don't like working with, and a lot of that is things like curtains and tablecloths and so on. And it's mostly because the little fibers get everywhere. It's not exactly a tight weave. So I like wovens that are really nice. I've never really worked with knits, so that's something that I would love to learn how to work with. We'll see how things go. Other questions in no particular order, as there are a few repeats or elaborations that have been requested. What is my favorite fiber art? I'd probably have to say knitting. It's the one I've been doing the longest. Well, knitting and needleworking. I don't have as much call these days to do cross stitch. And I look at cross stitch as being mostly decorative for, framing and stuff like that. It is a very representative. It and embroidery are both very representative. I do like with embroidery the fact that it looks like you're painting with thread. It's a little more versatile in that way. There's a little bit more movement than the very static crosses of cross stitch. And plus, I take a look at cross stitch as being more like pixel art. And that's just because I trained as a graphic artist. But for actual projects and experience, knitting is what I've had the most experience in. It's also the thing that I've had the most enthusiasm for. The reason why you don't see a lot of knitting around the channel is because people aren't really interested in seeing me knit. At least that's the way it feels to me. And there is something to be said for keeping your work and your play separate. There are folks who say that if you make your passion your job, you'll never work a day in your life. There are other people who flip it around and go, if you make your passion your job, you'll be working all the time. I would like to be able to have some sort of balance between what's work and what's play. Right now, my time is such that I need to concentrate more on the work and less on the play. So I do have quite a few outstanding projects. I think I've got a pair of socks I've been knitting for over a year. I've got a pie shawl that I've been working on for over a year. There never seems to be enough time for me to get around to doing the knitting that I would like to do, because I always have a sewing project that needs to be done. And someday I'll get back to the knitting. It's not a big deal. It's not like I'm going to lose my ability to do so. At least I hope not. What's my favorite fiber to knit with? Probably merino, but I couldn't tell you. I do like wool. I prefer it to acrylic, but I have grown to the point where I realize that everything has its use. There are people who are allergic to wool who acrylics cater to them admirably. Acrylics aren't necessarily great for the environment, but then again, a lot of the processing for wool fibers these days isn't either. So there's this sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't sort of attitude towards crafting these days. There is a conversation to be had about sustainability. Right now, I don't think that I'm that person to be able to have that conversation. I am definitely an unarmed opponent. I am not educated enough to be able to talk about it other than, gee, I really like doing this thing. Have I ever tried nail bending? The person who asked learned it recently and finds it quicker than knitting or crochet. I have not learned how to nail bend. I would love to try. There are plenty of other crafts that are, on the list as long as my arm of what I would love to do. At one point, we used to joke that my mother was a collector of dead crafts, and I think I have very easily and happily slipped into that particular niche within the family, and I have no problems with that. If anything, I love learning all of these different skills and techniques and how to apply them. And I've mentioned previously that if I hadn't gone off to art college, one of the things I would have loved to have done is go into anthropology or archaeology. The problem is that at the time I was listening to people who said, what are you going to do? Sit outside all day in the dirt and dig because you don't like doing any of that stuff. And very true. Very true. That was, of course, before the days of dress history and all of that good stuff. I spent a really, really long time sitting in the Royal Ontario Museum's costume and history section, just drawing dresses and drawing the different eras of diorama that they had on display. So something like dress history would have been just right up my alley at the time. If I wasn't a fiber crafter, what would be my hobby of choice? Goodness only knows, because I would have to say that my brother's kids are probably the first generation to not decide to go on to some sort of structured artistic training. So my grandfather took some art courses as an adult. My parents both graduated from art college. My brother's an art college graduate. I dropped out after the second year, so technically, like John Lennon, I should be famous and dead. It is refreshing that my brother's kids decided to do something different. As it is, my mom was that blend of pragmatist and artistic, because as much as she was trained as an interior designer, she was also a fantastic accountant. She had a grasp of numbers that just absolutely eludes me. But the thing is that my family tends to work with their hands. So my brother's a sculptor. My dad and my grandfather were both good carpenters. There's a lot of that within the family. My mom, of course, fiber artist, as well as doing things like caning chairs. I don't know what it is that I would do if I wasn't a fiber crafter, but I'm pretty sure it would be something. I mean, I've done chainmail in the past. I believe that the caning for Mom's chairs is in the utility room, although we're looking to get rid of the chairs that she didn't get caned. It would be kind of nice to just be able to have the time to work on the crafts that I do know, rather than just continuing to add other things to the stable. What skills do I have that translate across my life? I took music for many, many, many years, and as a result, I can count to 4 really well. And that actually comes in useful when I'm doing my editing for YouTube, because a lot of the editing that you do is to music. So when I'm choosing music, I'm trying to choose something that I think works with what it is that I'm doing. Either, it's from the same sort of era, or it has has a certain kind of feel. I do actually mute my narration so that I can listen to the music and actually cut on or against the beat depending on what kind of feel I want. If I want you to feel uneasy, I'm going to cut in different places than I will cut for making you feel relaxed and happy. And that, I think, is one of the things that does translate into other parts of my life. A lot of the techniques I use for my SMART goals of learning new things, of taking things a bite at a time and breaking it down into its component parts and learning how to do them, comes from music. One of the best ways to learn a piece of music is to break down a bar into its component parts and learn the rhythm and learn the pattern and learn where your fingers are going on the keyboard. It's one of those things that even though I might not play piano as well as I did when I was 17 years old or 18 years old, I might not have as many of the skills that I did or be taking lessons at the level that I did. There are still some things that I learned that do translate into the things that I'm doing now, whether it's cutting a video or learning how to do a new technique in needlework or knitting or crochet or whatever. How do I store my craft stuff? The person who asks is afraid to use their basement because of mice, even with 2 cats. And to that I say, unfortunately for the environment, your friend is plastic. Plastic and certain herbal deterrents. So I've used cedar and lavender liberally within my stash. The yarn and fiber stash is mostly in soft-sided plastic bins that will, or plastic bags that will insert nicely into the kind of bins that go into cube shelves. And I'm just looking at a couple of them right down here. There's also a couple over there. And if you watched the video where I tossed my stash because I saw a moth or two, that's the system that I put in place for that. Mum used plastic bins like Rubbermaid and Sterilite bins, and there's quite a few of them in the utility room over behind the camera. I've kept with some of that. A couple of my bins are now either out here or in there. She also had clear bins that she put a little bit more front and center of things that either she was working on or wanted to work on or was going to work on. So for instance, there's a shelf over that away that has about 6 small bins, either with fabric or work in progress or whatever. So I do have a couple of clear bins as well as not so clear bins. I think that one's more of a fuchsia or a rosé. I think there's a red one in there. Basically picking up 18-gallon bins from Walmart or wherever and stuffing it full of my fabric. That way, if it's a thick enough plastic, things can't get in. And if there's already stuff in it, like in the case of moths, having something like lavender or cedar is going to help deter any further infestation. You can then, if you have a large enough freezer or what have you, take one of your plastic bins and pop it into the freezer for a few days. Or if it's a heat wave and you have a car, you can always put a few of these bags into the back of your car and let it sit out in the sun while you're enjoying a picnic elsewhere. So basically baking it or freezing it is what's going to kill it. So far, I haven't seen any kind of action within the bins of creepy crawlies, so that's a good thing. Having fabrics and other supplies in sturdy bins keeps other stuff from getting into it. So a mouse is less likely to chew through the side of one of my Sterilite bins that I've picked up. Being able to see through some of the clear plastic things lets me see whether or not there's anything going on in there. Aside from that, it's just a matter of keeping a clean environment. I have had a couple of creepy crawlies. The pin cauldron is now in Ziploc, and the other 2 cauldrons are over there. They need to be picked up and inspected and possibly given their own protection. Somebody suggested putting, an elasticated muffin top on them, and that's a possibility. Or the other thing that I'm currently thinking I might do is put herbs and like potpourri or something in there that is specifically for deterring creepy crawlies. Because while they do serve a purpose in the house, I don't want the spiders to entirely die off. I'd just like them to stick to the deal that we have of, I don't see you, I don't have to do anything about you. And in the meantime, for things like my pins and other supplies, I went off to the dollar store and picked up these little mason jars with colorful lids. They're about $2 each. And this one has T-pins, this one has clips. One of the other ones around here has my glass-headed pins, my fine glass-headed pins. And I've got another one that's waiting for something to go into it. I'm pretty sure I'll find something at some point that needs to go in there. So there are options for keeping things safe. It's just what extent you want to go to. You want to get in? Your turn? How much do my helpers distract from what I'm doing? They are a distraction. They really are. Right now, for instance, they are upstairs. The door to the basement is closed. They have access to a sandbox, to food, to water, plenty of sofas to curl up on. They just can't get down here right now and walk all over my computer or get onto the sewing machine or make a lot of noise. When I'm doing my sewing, I do try to keep an eye on where they are, and if they're doing things like getting onto the ironing board when I've got a hot iron going, I will often make sure that they're out of the way, make sure the iron is off, get them out until everything is safe, and then when things are safe again, allow them back downstairs. Often after the first little rush of, run around, freak out, they'll go find a place to sleep. There's a kitty bed over here. There's a blanket over on a chair over that away. Once they've calmed down, they will usually sleep through whatever I'm doing over here. So they're not that much of a distraction, but they are enough of a distraction that I'm thankful we have a door I can close once in a while. What nicknames have been given to the furry little fiends? Most of the normal nicknames that you'd give a cat. I think the most unusual names that we've used have been calling our little Siamese a toasted marshmallow, and our little gray cat is sometimes known as the little silver lining. But other than that, Princess Fluffy Butt. I mean, nothing that obviously I'm going to use as a password for any of my stuff. So if that was what you were looking for, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Not like you'd find much in the account. Are the kittens allowed to sleep with us? That's kind of a personal question. But during the winter time when we have multiple duvets, they are allowed to get between the duvets. During the summertime, if they are willing to sleep on top of the covers or in a cat bed, they can sleep in our room. Unfortunately, one of the things we've noticed is that they like to try and get under the covers. And even though we are currently undergoing a cool spell, we can't have two duvets, so they'd be a little too close to our feet with sharp little claws. That's not going to work. The other thing is when the heat wave is going on, the screen windows are really easy to pull out. And we have had to keep a kitten from accidentally pulling out the window and going flying. So we would rather they slept in the hallway or in the spare bedroom than sleeping with us and endangering themselves or each other. So generally speaking, We try to put their welfare first, followed very quickly by the welfare of our own skin, and finally the welfare of the house, if that makes any kind of sense. All right, we have come to the life section, which somehow has become all about authors and reading.
Oh, that's very fascinating to me. I read a lot myself. Some people think I'm too intellectual, but I think it's a fabulous way to spend your spare time. I also play racquetball. Do you have any hobbies?
Sherry asks, who is my favorite author? To which I counter with, to read or to imbibe possibly dodgy spirits with until all hours of the morning. And I'm assuming that you mean published author whose works you can purchase. If it's the first, the safest bet is probably Terry Pratchett. If it's the latter, CL Polk. Also, what is my favorite book series? Possibly the one that's kind of nearest and dearest my heart is the Terry Pratchett Discworld series. Do I enjoy reading? I do. I have been reading since I was very, 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 very young, and I don't plan on giving it up anytime soon. If I am not reading in the traditional sense of using my eyes, I am usually listening to an audiobook. I just haven't had a lot of time recently to do a lot of reading because I have been doing a lot of sewing and stuff. I do have audiobooks, but these days, depending on how much time I have at my disposal, I might be watching like a 15-minute YouTube video rather than getting stuck in on a multiple hour long novel. Do I enjoy witchy mystery romance? Sometimes. I'm not really into romance at the moment. It's cyclical for me. I tend to swing between different genres. So right now I'm more inclined towards horror, fantasy, and science fiction. Possibly even true crime, but that's probably because I'm a middle-aged white woman. I do try to be fairly self-aware. Can I give my top 5 books? I could probably give more than that, but no particular order and subject to change at a moment's notice. The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, which is kind of like Bruce Willis's Red meets Murder, She Wrote, if you haven't read it. The Luminous Dead by Caitlin Starling, if you like queer horror with a somewhat happy ending. I read Axiom's End by Lindsay Ellis. It was a good book. I started the second book in the series, but I got distracted, so that's something I'm going to have to get back to. Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker and Dirk Gently series. Both of those are great. The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings trilogy by JRR Tolkien. Anything by Terry Pratchett. Anything by CL Polk. The Kingston Cycle trilogy, starting with the award-winning Witchmark. I read their current novella even though I knew the end in its larval stage, so I should probably pick up the final version at some point. And here's your reminder to not just read the things your friends write, also buy their books instead of like just asking for the advanced reader copies. I have a couple of authors for whom I have a mixture of both ARCs and copies we ordered because if your friend's an author, you should probably buy their books. Also, if you haven't read C's book, The Midnight Bargain, and you like Jane Austen novels or even novels where women fight for their bodily autonomy, give it a read. You may also find it has elements of Bridgerton, but that's a coincidence. C and I have been ogling 18th century fashion mashed with 20th century fashion for years. They just finally got around to putting it in book form. Now, the thing is, I saw the questions about reading and 2 things went through my mind. The first was, yay, literacy! And the second was, people are really interested in my reading habits.
It's a trap!
And while the questions may have been asked earnestly without any sketchy intentions, there definitely seem to be right and wrong answers these days, particularly when a literary or other media darling is beloved one day and reprehensible the next. And with that, on to hopefully less explosive topics. Unless, of course, knowing that I like Brussels sprouts on occasion is going to get me canceled. How much cooler is the basement compared to outdoors? Well, right now it's a toss-up because the weather finally broke. For how long, we don't know. But it's often a fairly mild, probably 17 to 20 down here. when upstairs it's somewhere between 25 to 27. That's Celsius. Couldn't tell you what that is in Fahrenheit because I'm a Canadian. Canadians are very fluid with their units of measure. I'm 5'8", but I can tell you that I probably bring home flour from the store by the kilogram. Basically what it comes down to is I don't have a thermometer down here, so I really can't say, but it's a handful of degrees, and when it's hot, it matters. Someone says, I mentioned that I used to lift weights. Could I expand on that? What was my weightlifting experience like? I started lifting weights when circuit training was the big thing, and quickly realized that most people were using that as an aerobic exercise rather than for building their muscle. Somehow I wound up finding out about the whole Body for Life challenge thing, picked up the book, and aside from the allegations of steroid use, the theory behind the actual workout seemed fairly sound, of taking some time and doing your cardio on one day, offsetting that with working on either your lower body or your upper body, working in sets to try and fatigue your muscles and then take a day off. So it worked out very well. It's not like I got down to the same level of muscle and body fat as, for instance, the gal who does Red's references, who is in absolutely fantastic shape, and I would love to look like that. Not going to happen. I'm too old, and I like pizza far too much. But hopefully I will be able to get down to a more healthy weight at some point. That's the goal, is working on the healthy eating and even just getting moving around. And that's the thing. As my weight went up, my energy level and my exercise went right down. If you watch something like The Biggest Loser, you probably think, well, you just start, running right out of the gate. And that's not the way to do things. Anytime I have successfully managed to lose a little bit of weight, I concentrate on what I'm eating first and making sure that I am getting rid of junk food and eating good food and feeling better in that respect. And as my weight comes down, my activity level goes up. I am looking forward to feeling fit enough to be able to spend the afternoon walking around downtown, for instance. And when that happens, I may just start weightlifting again. Who knows? It depends on whether I want to spend the money on a gym membership and have to work out around other people, or whether we've decluttered enough that I will have the space to be able to do that somewhere around the house. Either way, working out and weightlifting was a good experience. I would love to rediscover that maybe as I'm getting older, because weightlifting is good for your bones and just as good as taking a calcium supplement, apparently. And someone asks, do I know how hard it is to get Glaxol-based skin cream in the US? Damn millennials changing the supply and demand. Any other favorite lotions or skincare tips? And really, I am the wrong person to be asking about that, because I've got small pores like my dad. And generally speaking, I didn't get a zit until I was a senior in high school and getting ready for grad pictures. So, sorry. I use an Aveeno scrub in the shower, and that's pretty much it. Otherwise, there's a St. Ives hand moisturizer in our bathroom that I use because it doesn't leave any kind of oily residue. The only real tip I can say is check Costco. That's where my parents bought most of their stuff. I think CeraVe, CERAVE, is another moisturizer I've seen around, so that might be an idea. And the final question that I left for last, after going through all of that, am I okay? I think that's debatable. No, I think I'm doing all right. It's been almost a year since Dad passed away. It's been about a year and a half, 2 years since Mom went. We are working on getting things settled around here. I'm looking forward to having the estates cleared up and just being able to settle into this home, start doing a major declutter, and just concentrate on my work. I think that would be great. That's what I'm looking forward to. We'll see what else happens down the line. I do feel like I've been coming out of a depression, and even the husband has noticed that. And I think working on some of the projects I have recently has actually helped a lot, particularly since the sizing on those projects seems to be coming down rather than me having to size things up. It's all stuff that makes me happy, and I don't mind sharing that with you. All right, so we're in the home stretch. We are now on projects, which I believe is the last category. And Naomi asks, what is my favorite project to date, finished or unfinished? And what would I make if money/fabric/time were not an issue? And I'm pretty sure I saw that question more than once, or at least a variation on it. The March dress so far, I think, is my favorite. Even though the fashion fabric went in upside down, I look down at it, it's right side up to me, so I really don't care. I just can't wear it very much quite yet. I think it's more of a late summer to mid-fall type of dress. I guess we'll see when the time comes. I'm probably going to be wearing it with some sort of tights or leggings underneath when the time comes to be able to wear it longer in the year. There are some more projects coming down the path that I think are going to be really fantastic and fun. There's a collaboration, for lack of a better term, happening in September that I'm really excited to be participating in. It's going to allow me to do pretty much what I do best, which is turn shirts into dresses. Kind of. So you'll have to tune in to watch that. There are some other projects on my list that, well, I'm swiveling in my seat. Makes me very excited to think about. So I'm fidgeting. What can I say? But needless to say, I think of the things I've made so far, the March dress is the one that I use, that I like the most. I think out of all of the things that I have made, the one that gets the most use is the dress that I made out of the Garibaldi shirt. And that one, I think I've worn pretty much every month of the year or two that I've had that particular blouse, which is absolutely fantastic. I think the March dress is going to slip into that category as well once I've figured out the most prime time to wear it, whether that's, say, spring and fall or into winter time with, a sweater and tights and stuff like that. So we'll see how that goes, but those two are so far my number ones. Lucy asks, what's my least favorite part of any project? Also, what is my favorite sewing tip? And do I have a strong opinion on Kitchener stitch? Let's break that apart. What is the least favorite part of any project? Filming the reveal. You might not think that that's the case. I mean, here I am getting all dolled up and putting on the thing and prancing in front of a camera. It's the logistics of it. It's finding where it is that I can do the reveal shots, that I'm not going to bother other people, that I'm going to be able to get the correct light, that I'm going to be able to get the correct angles. My significant other is not a camera person. He likes to take photos, but he's not a videographer. He's not always available when I need to get stuff done. Like, he's not a videographer for hire. So me getting reveal shots done is mostly on me to do, which means that I am a location scout and a videographer, lighting expert, makeup artist, wardrobe artist. Basically, take the list of any movie or TV set and just compress it down, and me. So because it's just me and a camera and a tripod, very rarely what is happening up here is translated to what I actually can put together in the video itself, which is very frustrating. I do have equipment that I can use to try and get a little closer. Like I have a little external monitor. It's about that big that we picked up for probably about $150. I'm not sure. It was a Christmas gift one year from my Amazon wish list. It has one color profile. The camera has another color profile. So I can maybe get the composition of the shot, but I have to make sure that the color is correct in the camera or close enough so that I can color grade it afterwards. And this is a lot of information for somebody who does not make videos. One of the things you may find about people who make videos is that making videos is a hobby in itself. And I think even Bernadette Banner has mentioned that as much as she is doing the sewing and making the things, a real part of the whole process is making the video, and that is a big part of it. I mentioned that I went to art college. I went to art college for new media. Originally, I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to go into computer animation, or at least be part of that process. Technically, I probably should have gone into industrial design or graphic design because those were the other two major things that I was looking at. But a lot of my training had to do with film and video because that was what was on the curriculum. My curriculum was about 30 years out of date. But I took film and video, and some of the things have stuck with me. I don't have to use a light monitor anymore. That's built into my camera, thank goodness. But there are things that I would have liked to have learned more about that I am now learning about on the job. So video editing, video filming, making the process of making an actual video or feature of some sort, it all ties together. Maybe that also ties in with my whole transferable skills thing, because if I hadn't taken film and video in art college, I probably wouldn't have realized that this is something I can do. This is something I have some training for. But you will probably notice that there are quite a few YouTubers for whom doing the costuming or doing the sewing or whatever is only half or a third of the actual allure of doing YouTube. A very real portion of it is the hobby of making videos. And sometimes I think that's why it can take me up to 4 days to be able to edit together a video, because sometimes the dialogue comes out great, sometimes the footage comes out great, and sometimes marrying the two of them together is where the challenge is, particularly when the video is over a half hour long. So I guess that's why it's my least favorite part of the project, is doing the reveals. It's also the most challenging part, and sometimes when I get it right, it is the most satisfying part. I hope that answers the question. What is my favorite sewing tip? I think that would probably be get to know your machine. I don't know whether you can see my faff here. I got the faff secondhand from my other half's grandmother via my mother-in-law, who figured that I would be able to use it, and it has come in really handy. My grandmother-in-law was a quilter, so most of the bells and whistles that it has are really useful for quilters. But for a lot of the things that I do, of needing to have different seam allowances or different sewing techniques, the machine will do it fantastically. And she got, for her, what was an upgraded machine with the ability to move your needle back and forth. And that really helps when I'm trying to do things like top stitching. So it really helps knowing that machine. Knowing my serger, which is over there, I got it secondhand from my mother-in-law. Knowing what I do about it allows me to be able to tweak what I need to make sure that the tension stays where it is. Knowing that I'm going to forget things like to put up the mast, being one of the reasons why the thread breaks, etc., ad nauseum. I might complain about it, but I do know this machine fairly well. Also, not down here, but we'll probably go over here where the kitty bed is my old Kenmore, which I got from my mother, which I think was my grandmother's prior to that. When Mum realized that I was starting to do things like sewing, wanted me to have a machine, so she went and she cleaned it. She did maintenance on it and made sure everything was great and gave it to me. I keep it as my backup machine. And Mum was surprised that I kept it, even having the faff. And the husbeast is also surprised that I keep it, having the faff. The thing is, if anything happens to the faff, I've got my Kenmore, and the Kenmore is a tank. There are some things that the Kenmore does really, really well that the faff goes, I'm scared. So knowing your machine is number one, my biggest sewing tip. I have the manual for the faff right here, so that if I need to find out how to do a zigzag stitch, because I don't use them very often, I can do it here. And that's dusty. And that's something else. Like, if you don't have a serger, don't worry about it. You don't need a serger. You've got a zigzag stitch on your machine. If you don't have a zigzag stitch on your machine, you might want to look into finding out how to do a zigzag stitch on your machine, because most machines, unless it's a really old machine, can do a zigzag stitch. And even then, many old machines like my Kenmore can do a zigzag stitch if you have, say, the right cam to fit into the slot. So, know your machine. Do I have a strong opinion on Kitchener stitch? I use it. Some people use like a 3-needle bind off instead of Kitchener stitch. I think Kitchener stitch is just fine. I don't really have a strong opinion either way, except that I use it and that it works. What was my first project? I've been doing this stuff for a long time. Sewing, not so much. Sewing, I think the first thing that I sewed was in home economics, and I think it was a pencil case. After that, it was a pillow. And then after that, I started stealing my mom's supplies, and she got kind of angry with me. When you take the crinkle cotton that was meant for a skirt and you turn it into a duffel bag, your mom tends to get testy. So if you're a young person and you're thinking of stealing things out of your parents' stash, ask them first. They might actually have a need for it. Maybe see if your allowance, if you get one, can go towards getting you the stuff you need. The other part to that is if you are a parent and your kid wants a specific garment or something along those lines, let them do it. Maybe you don't want to make them a circle skirt because you don't think that it's going to look good on them. Let them make the damn circle skirt. My first real garment that I made for myself, I think, is the first real garment that I made for myself, if I'm not mistaken, was a plaid skirt, a kilt skirt with a kilt pin. It does not fit. It would be nice if it did, but it just doesn't fit. If you watched the Winslow culotte video, then you've probably seen my second project that I made for myself, at least garment project that I made for myself, and that's the white blouse. I have absolutely no idea what pattern it is. It has gone poof. I have tried to find it. It is missing. But I had made a blouse and a top each for myself and the husbeast in the whole sort of poet/pirate style top. And both of them have yellowed horribly. So at some point I need to cut the buttons off of at least mine, possibly his as well, and remake a couple of shirts. And I don't see that being a problem. I've got some batiste that I had picked up, meaning to make myself a new pirate or poet shirt. I have always been kind of chasing that 1980s Sarah Williams Labyrinth outfit of the jeans, the poofy sleeve top, and the vest. And while I've done my own kind of variation on it, eventually I'd like to do my own sort of movie version on it. Whether or not anybody approves of David Bowie and little David Bowie, who knows? It's very possible. I think I saw some white satin in the other room at one point, like a heavier satin. I might just turn it into I might just, embroider the swirl pattern on it in metallic gold and call it a day, make the vest. Who knows? But fact remains, I do need to at some point replace that white poofy sleeved blouse and actually put in a good collar, because the facing on that thing is just horrible. It's my second project, and if you look closely enough, it shows. Am I a project or a process knitter? Yes. Some things I want the thing, or I want the thing for somebody else. Other things, I want to try the thing. I made the pie shawl because I wanted to try something and I wanted a gift from my mom. So I guess the answer to that is just yes. Do I know the contents of my stash, and do I have projects for all of it? The yarn and fiber stash is much more fluid. There are certain things, though, that I do have a kind of idea, like certain sock yarns I've kind of pigeonholed as these are things for shawls when the right pattern comes up. Certain things in other areas are like, these are for socks, these are for mitts, blah, blah, blah. There's a couple of things that there are sweater portions for. There are certain things in Mum's stash where she has a couple of sweater kits that eventually I would love to be able to make up either for myself or for relatives. So when it comes to the fiber stuff, it's a little more fluid, but I have a general idea. For most of my stuff, there are certain things that I do have like a little list of what I would like to make, and I do tend to buy fabric with those things in mind. So for instance, I have a fabric that is a quilting cotton with cartoon bees on it that I plan to make into a sundress of some sort at some point. I had an idea what I was going to be making with this particular fabric. I did wind up changing my mind as to the specific pattern, but I had an idea of what it was going to be. There are a few things that do change, but most things have a specific outcome. Like there's a couple of very specific dresses that are coming up in the next couple of months that I have purchased fabric for specifically. There are some things in the stash that I know would lend itself very well to certain things. Like I mentioned, Mum had bins labeled with quilting or smocking or whatever. There are certain projects that I have sort of cataloged in my brain of I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do this. So I have a good idea of what's in the stash. There are some projects that, yes, I have already itemized that I'd like to do and have kind of assigned things to them. Other things are a little more fluid. Someone asked if I would be interested in making a step-in slip, and I have never really thought about it. I'm not closing myself off to the opportunity, but never seen one. Don't know what it is. I'd have to take a look at it and see if I have a use case for it. What are the best to worst projects I ever worked on? That's a hard one. Right now, I'd say that the March dress was a real win. The Liseron blouse is nice. I rather like it, and I'm looking forward to making a dress from the same pattern, particularly with the folds of fabric at the back. The Coquelicot skirt was kind of hit and miss. I wouldn't say that it was one of the worst things that I've made. Possibly a couple of the worst things that I did was I made a plaid skirt out of a tablecloth. Little red and green fibers all over the house for months afterwards. I would probably, if I was to remake it, make it a different way and make it longer. The Upton dress didn't come out very well, and I think it's the problem of making something specifically for Christmas or for the holidays. I don't do a lot of holidaying with people. Like, if I am having people over for Christmas dinner, then chances are pretty good a sweater and a pair of jeans is probably the better bet, because I'm going to be sticking an apron over it, helping out with the cooking. So having a fancy dress for that kind of thing over the years, I've kind of realized is probably not the best thing. Plus, I'm not going to a lot of Christmas parties that require that sort of thing. I'm, middle-aged, and even my significant other's Christmas parties at work are fairly casual events. So I'd be better off putting the energy towards something else. That said, the Upton dress pattern is going to come in handy in the future, because I do plan to revisit it. Maybe not as formally, maybe using it in a more informal manner. We'll see. We can just say that I've got ideas. So sometimes even the worst projects can actually teach me a lot about what I want to do to make a better project. I try to look at it from a more positive point of view than just, well, that was a hot steaming pile of what is my biggest wish list project if money/skill/time were no concern. Also, do I have a dream project, and what is it? What's stopping me from doing it? Do I have a dream costume project? So it's basically all the same question. And the thing is, I find I know everybody loves that whole title of my dream, yada, yada, yada. The thing is, I have seen many, at least a handful of YouTube channels where almost every second video is making my dream blah. and I'm like, wow, you dream a lot. I grew up with like your dream thing being like this one grail thing. And I've kind of had something against the whole concept of the dream or grail project or object, since a friend of ours mentioned what their grail pen was, because we do like fountain pens and our friends also like fountain pens. So one of them mentioned what his grail pen was, and then proceeded to just go and buy it. And then all of a sudden he had a new grail pen, and I'm like, I thought the whole concept behind the grail pen is that it's hard to get and something to work towards, kind of like finding the Holy Grail. So, do I have a dream project? Not really. I mean, if you'd asked me years ago, I might have said the Ever After dress, or I might have said the dress from Labyrinth's big fantasy ballroom scene, or something from The Princess Bride, or whatever, like one of the many fantasy movies that I watched growing up. Or it could very well be something from history, a full Tudor dress. The idea of Italian Renaissance has crossed my mind as being something that would be fun to work on. But again, I try not to put all my eggs in one basket, because I don't want to risk disappointing myself or anybody else. So while I would love to be able to say that I have a big wish list project or a dream project or whatever, I like to take the smaller wins. I like to learn and make things that fit. Like right now, just having things that fit and look good on me are the dreamiest thing I can think of. One of the reasons why the March dress was such a big win is I put that thing on and it's like, wow, it feels a little big on me. And then I realized it's the right size. I am the right size for this particular dress. This is great. And there are a couple of other dresses where I've noticed that my measurements are measuring up correctly with their packaging, or I've done a adjustment of some sort that looks like it's going to make things fit properly. And that makes me really excited. So I'm taking the small wins here. I can think about Italian Renaissance and Tudor gowns later, or making a kirtle that doesn't show off all my lumps and bumps. We'll think about that later. Right now, I'm just going to take the small wins. And I think that is about it. It is getting kind of late, so I am going to go and pick up the husbeast from work because he was working late tonight. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend, and I will see you back here next time, hopefully with these things finished off over here so that you can see what I'm doing with the fun stripy fabric and the brown and the black underneath it. Hopefully I'll have all of that figured out, sussed out by then. Remember to do something fun, and I will see you next time. All right, time to go pick up the husbeast and make sure that the cats have not decided to hold any wild parties upstairs.